The sun had dipped just below the hills when Amara left with the clay pot on her head. The light that remained was gold-stained and soft, casting long shadows behind her as she walked barefoot down the narrow red dust path leading toward the well. The village dogs were already howling at nothing, sensing night's approach, and the women were sweeping doorways and calling children inside. But Amara, 17 and stubborn, laughed off her mother's warnings about being late. "I'll be back before the frogs sing," she had said. That was the last anyone saw of her. When she didn't return by nightfall, her mother assumed she had stopped at a friend's house. The well was a place of chatter. Young girls trading secrets, humming, dipping their arms elbow-deep in cool water. She waited, then waited more, pacing, muttering, scolding herself for letting the girl go alone. When darkness fully blanketed the sky and no footsteps approached, something inside her mother folded tight and cold. She roused her husband, who called out to neighbors. They brought lanterns. The men searched the path. The women searched their prayers. They found only her slippers, placed side by side on the cracked stone lip of the well, as if she had stepped out of them and simply walked away into the air. The pot was not broken. It was still upright, untouched, as if someone had placed it down with care. The water was clear. The rope uncut. There was no blood. No sound. No sign. And so the days began to pass, one after another like blank pages in a book no one wanted to read. By morning, the first search party had combed the entire path to the well and back, spreading into the forest edges, calling her name with growing desperation. By the third day, the villagers spread toward the riverbanks, the dry ridges, the hill that overlooked the lowlands. They shouted, beat drums, left food. Children were told to stay close. Women whispered of kidnappers, of spirits, of forest mouths that opened only for girls who went alone. But no one said the word death. Not out loud. Her mother, Ideabi, forbade it. "No body," she said, voice flat and hollow. "No death." And so, a strange morning began, one without closure, without ritual, without weeping. Amara's bed was not touched. Her clothes remained folded. Her favorite beads stayed in the wooden bowl beside the window. The door to her room was left slightly ajar, in case she returned quietly in the night. Ideabi laid out a fresh wrapper each dawn and placed warm food beneath the shrine. Not for the gods. For her daughter. "Hungry girls don't stay away," she murmured each time. By the second week, whispers bloomed like weeds. Some said she had run away. That she'd fallen in love with someone beyond the hills and gone to him. Others claimed to have heard voices by the well at dusk. A girl humming, a splash, a second voice that did not belong to any human. One old woman insisted she had seen footprints in the millet field the night after Amara vanished, but the prints were backward, leading away from the well, into the hills where no path existed. The elders called a meeting. Offerings were made. A priest was summoned from across the river, carrying bones and ash and feathers wrapped in red thread. He sniffed the air, circled the well, dipped his fingers into the water, and frowned. "This place remembers nothing," he said. "That is not natural." A week later the well dried. Not all at once but slowly, unnaturally. First the water turned muddy, then thick, then it vanished altogether. No rain had fallen in days but the river still flowed. Other wells remained full. Only this one, the one where Amara's footprints ended, cracked open like a dried throat and refused to give even a drop. "They say the forest calls girls like her," whispered one of the young women who had fetched water with Amara that very morning. "They say the ones with light in their eyes and secrets on their tongues get chosen." "Chosen by what?" another asked. No one answered. As the dry season wore on, Ideabi stopped speaking to visitors. She refused comfort, refused prayer. Each morning she rose before the rooster and lit a fire, cooking food only Amara loved. Each night she sat beside the locked door, waiting, eyes open, listening for a voice that never came. Her husband, Okeke, aged 10 years in 1 month. His once loud laughter dissolved into tight nods and silent stares. He began carving things out of wood, dolls, tiny bowls, animal shapes, and placing them in a line beneath Amara's window. "It's so she remembers where home is," he explained when asked. "So she won't get lost." The village moved on as villages always do. But not really. Because even though people stopped searching, stopped asking, stopped knocking, no one used the well again. It was cursed, they said. Or sacred. Or both. The children avoided it, crossing to the far side of the path. The women fetched water from the far river, even when it hurt their backs. And the men, when walking past it at night, walked faster. No one lit fires near it. No one sang. On the 40th day after Amara vanished, Ideabi dreamed. In her dream, the house was silent and the floor cold. She heard footsteps, not on the path but within the walls. A humming. A voice she recognized but couldn't understand. When she turned toward her daughter's door, it was open. And inside, in the moonlight, the shadow of a girl stood, not looking at her but at the window. She woke breathless, heart slamming like a drum. She ran to the room. The door was shut. The bed untouched. But the bowl of beads had spilled, and one bead, round and red, rolled across the floor and stopped at her feet. Adaobi dropped to her knees and wept for the first time. The villagers heard her wail and said nothing. They had no comfort left to offer. Season turned to season. A year passed. The family did not hold a burial. No stone was carved. Her name remained on the wall of blessings at the shrine. And every eclipse, Adaobi walked to the well alone and placed a single hibiscus flower on the stone lip, speaking softly. Wherever you are, bring back your name. Then came the third rainy season since Amara's vanishing. A new traveler came through the village, a woman with strange eyes and a walking stick carved with symbols no one recognized. She said little, accepted no food, and never smiled. On her third night in the village, she went alone to the well and stood there until morning. When dawn broke, the well was full again. Clear, cold water. No one asked what she saw. No one dared. But when she left, she turned to Adaobi and said, "The forest does not keep what isn't meant to stay. When it's time, the earth will open. Listen to the roots." And she was gone. That night, Adaobi dreamed again. She stood in a field of red flowers. The sky above her swirled not with stars but eyes. And beneath her feet, the soil hummed. A voice, not a whisper, not a scream but a breath, said, "Wait." And so she waits still. Some say Amara is gone. Others say she walks the hills in another skin. But her room remains untouched. The beads are still in the bowl. And the well, now full again, sometimes reflects not the sky, but the face of a girl who never came home. The night was thick with heat, the kind that clings to the skin and makes every breath feel like swallowing steam. The windows were open, the mosquito nets tucked in tight, and somewhere beyond the village, the river sang its soft, endless lullaby. It had been 3 days since Amara vanished, and the house had turned into something else, quieter, heavier. Even laughter felt wrong, as though the walls disapproved. Obinna, only 8, did not understand grief in the way adults did. He knew his sister had gone to fetch water and never came back. He knew people had searched, that his mother had stopped cooking his favorite okra stew, and that his father now carved tiny things from wood but never played with him anymore. He missed Amara, missed how she used to sneak him extra pieces of roasted plantain, missed the songs she sang when she oiled his hair. He didn't know how to say it, so he didn't. He simply waited like everyone else. But on the third night, he woke up needing to pee. The moonlight poured through the windows like milk, spilling onto the floor and illuminating the hallway in pale blue. Obinna rubbed his eyes, pulled his blanket off, and padded down the corridor barefoot, careful not to wake his parents. The house creaked as always, but that night it felt like something more than the house was breathing. As he neared the kitchen door, he paused. There was a shadow on the wall ahead of him. At first he thought it was his, tall and stretched by the slanted moonlight, but when he stepped forward, the shadow didn't follow. Instead, it moved slightly to the left, swaying, waiting. It was small, smaller than him. Thin arms, narrow shoulders, the shape of a girl in profile. His breath caught. Slowly he turned around. No one was there. When he turned back, the shadow was gone. He stood frozen for a long moment, eyes wide, trying to convince himself it was just a trick of the light. He hurried back to bed, bladder forgotten, pulling the blanket up to his chin. He didn't tell anyone the next morning. Not his father, not his mother. Especially not his mother, whose eyes looked more like glass now than anything else. But that wasn't the last time he saw the shadow. The next night, just before sleep pulled him under, he opened his eyes and saw it standing at the foot of his bed. The same silhouette, unmoving. It didn't step forward, didn't breathe. Just stood. Watching. He blinked once, twice, and it was gone. He told himself it was a dream. He wanted it to be a dream. But the morning after that, his mother screamed. Adaobi had woken early as she always did, to sweep the house and check the offering outside Amara's door. The hibiscus had wilted in the night, its petals browned and curling. She sighed and entered her daughter's room to open the window. And stopped. Muddy footprints. They led from the center of the room to the window. Bare, slender prints, small, like a girl's. The sheets were rumpled. The beaded anklet that had sat untouched on the nightstand since Amara's disappearance now lay on the floor. A single red bead was missing. Adaobi stared for a long time. Her breath stuttered in her throat. She closed the door softly and didn't speak a word of it for hours. But something shifted in her gaze that day, no longer blank with grief but wary, expectant. Obinna watched her from the corner of the room, twisting the hem of his shirt between his fingers. That evening, when he gathered the courage to tell her about the shadow, she didn't brush him off or smile with sadness. She listened. "Smaller than you?" she asked softly. He nodded. "Did it speak?" "No. Just watched." Adeabi's lips pressed into a thin line. She looked toward Amara's door, then to the hallway beyond. "Don't be afraid of her," she whispered. He stared. "It's her?" "Maybe," she said. "Or maybe what's left of her." That night, she left the door to Amara's room open for the first time. And Obinna, restless and trembling, crawled into bed with his parents for the first time in years. Okeke wrapped an arm around him, startled but silent. Adeabi did not sleep at all. The next few days passed like smoke, thin, strange, without form. Doors creaked open when no one was near. The house, already quiet, grew quieter. Things moved. A cup turned on its side, a scarf found dangling from a rafter, a comb placed neatly in the center of the hallway. Always things that belonged to Amara. Always placed with care. On the 6th night, Obinna woke to find his blanket pulled halfway across the floor. When he reached for it, it tugged back. He screamed. His parents rushed in, lights blazing, only to find him curled in a corner, pointing. "She pulled it," he cried. She's angry." But when asked what she looked like, he couldn't answer. "I didn't see her face," he said, voice shaking. "Just her fingers." Adeabi knelt beside him, took his hands in hers. "You're not in trouble. Neither is she. She's just lost." "I don't want her to be lost," he whispered. Neither did Adeabi. She began placing water by the door each night. Not in a pot, but in Amara's favorite calabash, the one painted with blue swirls. She added a comb beside it. A wrapper folded neatly on the threshold. She whispered things as she worked, small things, old things. Songs from childhood. Phrases from lullabies. "If you are cold, warm yourself. If you are thirsty, drink. If you are tired, come inside." And then on the 7th night, the house exhaled. Not a breeze. Not wind. A true breath, deep and long and from nowhere. Every candle went out at once. The temperature dropped. The calabash rattled. When the light returned, the water was gone. Not spilled. Gone. Obinna refused to sleep alone that night. Adeabi let him sleep curled beside her, but her own eyes never closed. She lay facing the door, watching the shadows stretch and shift. At one point, just before dawn, she swore she saw a shape lean into the room, pause, and then disappear. The next morning, she found red hibiscus petals scattered across the hallway floor, fresh as if picked just hours before. But there were no hibiscus trees blooming this late in the season. Word began to spread. First the neighbor who heard humming near the well. Then the hunter who claimed he saw a girl's shape pass through the fog at the edge of the forest. She looked, not real, he said. Like smoke with bones. Others began sleeping with charms beneath their pillows. A group of women went to the priest. "She's haunting us," they said. The priest disagreed. "She was not buried," he replied. "She was not blessed. What you see is not haunting. It is memory refusing to be forgotten." Okeke, tired of silence, went to the well himself. He stood there from dusk till dawn. He brought Amara's comb, her slippers, her beads. He said nothing, just waited. When he returned, he said only this. "The water doesn't ripple. Even when I throw a stone." By the 10th night, the family began to speak of her in the present tense again. Adeabi did not say she was. She said, "She likes this bowl," or "She always hums that tune." Obinna placed small toys in her room and checked each morning to see if they had moved. One did. The small wooden lizard his father carved. Its tail was curled the opposite way the next morning, pointing toward the closet. They opened the closet. Inside was her wrapper. What? Cold. And beneath it, the missing red bead. Adeabi picked it up, cradled it in her palm. "She's not finished," she whispered. "She still needs something." The mirror in the main room had always been a quiet thing, hanging above the fireplace for as long as anyone could remember. Oval, with a frame carved from old Irako wood, it bore the weight of generations. Visitors once admired it. It had belonged to Amara's grandmother and was one of the few objects in the house that had survived fire, floods, and time. It was thick and old, the kind of glass that slightly warped a person's reflection, making you appear taller, sometimes thinner, depending on where you stood. After Amara's disappearance, no one looked into it much anymore. It wasn't intentional. Grief had changed the rhythm of the household. Meals were eaten without ceremony. Chores were done quietly. Doors were shut sooner in the evenings. The mirror, like the rest of the house, simply observed in silence. Until the morning Obina noticed the fog. It was a dry morning, the kind where the dust clung to everything, where the wind felt like heat dragged across skin. There had been no rain for weeks, and the air inside the house was heavy with stillness. Yet, the surface of the mirror was hazy as though someone had breathed against it. A faint mist swirled in long strokes. "Mama," Obina said softly, pointing. The mirror's sweating. Adeobi turned, frowning. She approached the mirror and wiped it with her palm. The fog smeared but didn't fully disappear. She stepped back, eyeing it suspiciously. Then she shook her head and muttered something about old wood, old things, old tricks. But the fog returned the next day. This time it came with fingerprints. Small ones. They trailed across the lower part of the glass, as if a child had pressed curious hands against it. Not smudges, not dust, distinct outlines like impressions in breath. They vanished when anyone touched them, but always returned in the same pattern by nightfall. Adeobi didn't tell Okeke immediately. She didn't want to upset him. He had been holding together his grief like a clay pot patched with leaves. Any pressure and he might spill open. But he noticed on his own. It was late, the kind of late when the crickets had quieted and even the wind forgot to blow. Okeke sat alone in the main room, carving again, a half-finished flute in his hands. The mirror loomed across from him, dim in the flickering oil lamp light. He glanced up. He swore he saw something move. He looked closer. His own reflection stared back, tired, older than he remembered. But behind it, a blur. A shape. A figure. Slender. Standing. Still. He turned sharply. The room was empty. Obina was asleep, Adeobi still in the back room. He faced the mirror again. The figure was gone. But the glass was warm when he touched it. Warm like breath on skin. Like someone had been standing too close. That night he said nothing. But he began to sleep with the door to Amara's room slightly open. And the mirror began to change. It fogged at different times of day, sometimes for hours. Sometimes it pulsed gently, a soft light behind the mist, faint and rhythmic like a heartbeat. At night, Obina said he heard a soft knocking sound coming from it, though when they stood in the room together all was still. Then came the scratching. Oh, subtle. Like nails dragging faintly across glass. Okeke sat frozen the first time he heard it, heart tight in his chest. The sound lasted a few seconds, then vanished. He approached the mirror, hands shaking, and placed his palm against it. His breath caught. The surface rippled. Just once, like a drop of water had hit a calm pond. Adeobi touched it later and it was cold. Not cold like metal or stone, but hollow like something had pulled the warmth from it. On the 7th night after the first fog, Okeke saw her. Not a blur. Not a suggestion. Amara. Her silhouette in the mirror, standing behind him. He was brushing dust from the top shelf when his eyes lifted and met the glass. His own reflection was there, eyes wide. And behind it, just slightly to the right, was the unmistakable outline of his daughter. Her braids, her sloped shoulders, the hem of the blue wrapper she always wore for festivals. She didn't move. She didn't smile. He turned. Nothing. Only air. Only the empty chair where she used to sit and twist her hair. Only the smell of hibiscus lingering faintly. When he looked back, the mirror was empty. But the glass remained warm, not from the sun, not from heat, but from her. He called Adeobi. She touched it too. "She's trying to come back," she whispered. But the mirror began acting stranger still. Its surface began reflecting things that weren't there. A pot that hadn't been placed yet. A chair turned at the wrong angle. Once, Obina swore he saw the reflection of someone running through the hallway, but there was no sound and no one else in the house. One morning, Adeobi stood before it and watched herself age 10 years in a blink. Her hair silvered, her eyes lined, and behind her, Amara's shape stood unmoving. When she blinked, everything returned to normal. The family agreed to cover it. A white cloth was hung over the mirror's face. The scratching stopped. The fog did not return. Days passed in silence. Adeobi said they'd given her peace. Obina started sleeping again. But Okeke couldn't stop thinking about the warmth. Late one night, when he was sure everyone was asleep, he crept into the main room and pulled the cloth back. The mirror was perfectly clear. No fog. No warmth. Just him, tired, haunted. But he stood there anyway, waiting. It took time. The lamp flickered once. The air tightened. Then the smallest shift. Behind his reflection, a hand touched the glass from inside. He didn't move. Didn't breathe. The fingers were small, delicate, the nails short. Slowly they slid down the glass. A face followed, barely visible as if she stood behind a veil. "Amara?" he whispered. Her lips moved. No sound. He pressed his hand against the mirror. Hers matched it. It felt like flesh. Warm. Soft. Real. Tears streamed down his face. "You're alive," he said. Her head tilted. She mouthed one word. "Not Papa. Not home. Not help." She said clearly, "Mirror." The surface went cold. The vision faded. Okeke fell to his knees. The next day the mirror shattered. No one heard it break. It was still covered. But when Adeobi lifted the cloth that morning, the glass had split clean down the middle. Not broken, not splintered. Just one straight crack, as though the mirror had been sliced with a blade. Inside it, her reflection lingered for just a moment longer than the others. After that, the room grew colder. A breeze passed through even when the windows were shut. The fireplace, once dead, sparked on its own. The clock ticked out of rhythm. And sometimes, just before dusk, a girl's giggle echoed softly from the mirror's frame. Not haunting but familiar. Okeke hung a strip of cloth over the crack. Not to hide it, but to mark it. They never removed the mirror. It had become part of the house now. Part of her. It began with the weeping. Soft, almost delicate. Not loud enough to startle, but enough to stop the heart for a breath. The first night, Obinna thought it was the wind. Then he thought it was his mother, Adeobi, curled on the mat beside his father, crying in her sleep. But when he crept close and peeked around the doorway, he saw her chest rising and falling steadily. Her eyes were shut. Her face was slack. She wasn't weeping. But still the sound came, low and aching like someone mourning behind a closed wall. He tiptoed back to his room and pressed the pillow over his ears. It came again the next night. And again. This time his older sister Nena heard it too. She was folding clothes by the oil lamp when she stiffened and tilted her head. "Is that?" Obinna nodded. "She's crying again. Ma." Nena called softly toward the back room. No answer. So she crept to the curtain and peeked in. Their mother was asleep, arms folded under her cheek. Peaceful. But the crying, it continued. This time it sounded closer. Nena whispered a prayer, closed her eyes and waited. When she opened them, everything was still. She went back to folding clothes. She told herself it was the wind. But then the laughter came. Soft giggles that danced from corner to corner like smoke. It started faintly, like a girl trying not to be caught. The way Amara used to laugh when they played hide and seek, when she found a new spot no one had thought of. It wasn't just sound, it was memory woven into it, breathless and familiar. Nena stood at the threshold of the hallway and whispered her sister's name. No response. The lamp flickered behind her. Then footsteps. Light. Darting across the attic floor. She froze. The attic had always been a quiet place. No one used it much anymore. Old trunks, cracked bowls, the kind of forgotten things houses collect over years. Amara had loved it when she was little. She'd play up there with her dolls, arranging their hair and singing to them in her small, made-up language. But after she turned 12, she rarely went up. After she disappeared, no one had dared go up at all. The trapdoor still creaked when opened. Nena had to brace her hands and push the ladder down, her breath held tight in her chest. The moment she opened the hatch, the scent hit her. Rainwater. And earth. Like wet grass and something older, like clay. She climbed slowly. The laughter had stopped. At the top, the moonlight poured in through the small attic window. It barely lit the room, but she could make out the boxes and cloths stacked along the walls. Dust clung to everything. Spiderwebs laced the corners. Then her eyes found the doll. It sat alone in the middle of the floor. It hadn't been there before. Amara's doll. Nena recognized it instantly, with its yellow dress and missing button eye. Amara had named her Nwaka, claimed she could sing. Nena had laughed at her for it once, and Amara had cried and refused to talk to her for 3 days. The doll's head was tilted slightly, its arms out as if it had been dropped mid-play. But that wasn't what made Nena gasp. The doll's hair, once stiff and dry, now hung in wet clumps. Dripping. She took a step forward. Her slipper made a squelching sound. She looked down. A small puddle had formed around the doll. The floor beneath was soaked. She leaned in hesitantly and picked it up. The cloth of the dress was damp, cold, and it smelled, not of dust or age, but of the river. The same one where Amara had fetched water the day she disappeared. The same one that had held nothing of her. Nena backed away slowly, her skin prickling. The silence in the attic deepened, as if the air itself was holding breath. She lowered the doll gently onto a nearby chest, wiped her hands on her wrapper and climbed back down, locking the hatch tight behind her. She didn't sleep that night. In the morning the doll was gone. She didn't tell anyone. Not yet. That evening, during dinner, the mirror fogged again. Their father stared at it long after everyone else had turned away. Nena watched him. She saw him murmur something, perhaps a name, before leaving his food untouched. That night, the weeping started again. And this time everyone heard it. Not just from the walls but inside the walls. In the beams. Beneath the floorboards. It moved, not like an echo but like someone crawling through the very bones of the house. Then it stopped. And a voice, thin and breathy, whispered, "Nena." Everyone in the room froze. Adeobi stood slowly, her hands trembling. "Did you hear that?" Okeke's lips parted, but no words came. Obinna huddled into his sister's side. "It was her," Nena said finally. "It sounded like Amara." Silence. And then a thud above. The attic. Okeke rose first, his feet slow but certain. He retrieved the oil lamp and motioned for Nena to follow. Together they pulled down the ladder and climbed. The attic smelled stronger now, like wet roots and old metal. The puddle was larger, seeping across the floor. And there once again sat the doll. Dry this time. But beside it something else. A strand of black braid. Not from the doll. It was too long. Too real. Nena knelt and picked it up, her fingers shaking. It was hers. She turned slowly. There, on the chest, etched faintly in dust, were words, as if drawn by a child's fingertip. "Come find me." They left the attic in silence. In the days that followed, the house grew colder. Not in temperature but in feeling, like all warmth had drawn inward and vanished. Doors opened on their own. Lamps flickered and died. Once, Nena heard Amara singing. The same lullaby their mother used to hum when they were children. But it came from beneath the floor. They searched the root cellar again. Found nothing new. But every night, Amara's voice returned. Sometimes crying. Sometimes giggling. Sometimes just whispering their names, not to haunt but to remind. "I'm still here." The family began leaving bowls of milk by the mirror. Not because they believed she needed it but because it felt like an offering. A way to say, "We hear you." On the 7th night, Adeobi stayed up alone. She sat in front of the mirror with the oil lamp, staring at her own face. Behind her, the shadow grew. And this time the voice was louder. "Mama." She turned sharply. No one there. But the mirror, it fogged again. This time, only a single word etched itself into the glass, slow and deliberate, like a finger dragging through mist. "Why?" Adeobi broke then. Fell to her knees. Wept like she hadn't since the day the slippers were found. "I didn't let them bury anything," she whispered. "Because I knew. I knew you weren't gone." The house for a moment seemed to exhale. That night they all slept without hearing a sound. But the next morning, Nena found the doll sitting at the foot of her bed, its hair freshly wet, smelling faintly of rain. And in its lap lay a single silver coin. One that Amara had stolen from the market years ago and hidden where no one ever found it. Until now. The morning was heavy with heat, thick enough to press down on the roofs and silence the birds. Even the wind refused to stir, as if the village itself held its breath. By now, the story of Amara's disappearance had become more than just tragedy. It was legend. Her name carried an ache, a question mark, a chill. People no longer asked what happened. They only crossed the road when passing the family's home, muttering small prayers under their breath. So when the woman arrived, cloaked in gray, bare feet caked in red dust, she drew eyes like thunder draws the sky. She came walking from the east, through bush and sun, staff tapping the path with each step. Her face was creased like bark, and around her neck hung beads made of bones too small to be animal. The children scattered when she passed. The elders watched with narrowed eyes. And she stopped only once, in front of the house where Amara used to live. She didn't knock. She didn't call out. She stood in the shade of the neem tree, tilted her head, and inhaled through her nose like someone testing the air for smoke. Then she said, not loudly but firmly, "There is grief here. Old grief. But no death." Adeobi stepped outside, wiping her hands on her wrapper. She had been pounding yam, trying to fill the house with the sounds of normal life. But nothing felt normal. Not anymore. And now the stranger stood at her doorstep speaking riddles. "I don't know who you are," Adeobi said cautiously, "but this is not a place to visit casually." The woman didn't blink. "I don't visit casually. I go where I am pulled." Your home called out. Called out. Not in voice. In ache. Something inside this house echoes. Grief without burial. Loss without release. Okeke joined his wife at the door, his arms folded across his chest. You're one of those traveling seers, aren't you? I am what is needed. Sometimes a seer. Sometimes a witness. And what are you now? Adaobi asked. The woman's eyes, gray and clouded, lifted to meet hers. Now I am a reminder. They didn't know why they let her in. Later they would try to explain it, perhaps the way her voice never wavered, or how her presence felt strangely weightless, like standing near something hollow but vast. She sat on the mat without asking, drank the offered water without thanks, and stared at the wall for so long that Nena began to think she had fallen asleep with her eyes open. Then she spoke. She still walks here. Everyone stilled. Obina looked toward the hallway. The mirror on the far wall fogged slightly, though no one breathed near it. She's not dead? He asked, barely whispering. The woman tilted her head. No. Not alive either. What you have, what walks your halls and weeps in your walls, it is the imprint. The shadow left when a story is interrupted. She was taken, Adaobi said, voice trembling. Her slippers were found. Her dress. But nothing else. Yes, the woman said. Taken, or traded. Sometimes the earth swallows what is not ready to go. Sometimes the sky steals what it finds too bright. Then where is she? Nena asked. Where did she go? The woman turned slowly to face her. Some questions don't have where. Only why. Okeke shook his head. You speak in riddles, old woman. We have searched the forest, the hills, the rivers. If there is no body, then where is the girl? I told you, she said calmly. There is grief, but no death. Then why the laughter at night? Adaobi asked. Why her voice in the attic? Why the dolls? The braid? The woman looked at her, then turned to the mirror. She rose, walked to it, and pressed her palm against the glass. The mirror fogged instantly. But instead of seeing her reflection, they saw Amara. Her face. Her eyes. Only for a second. And then it vanished. The woman turned. You see now. She has not left. But she is no longer where she began. She's trapped. Nena asked. Not trapped. Stretched. Her spirit is walking two roads. One backward, one forward. And neither has ended. Then what do we do? Obina asked. How do we bring her back? The woman crouched beside him. You don't bring her back. You let her return. She can't. Adaobi cried. If she could, she would have. It's been weeks. We've heard her. Felt her. But we've never seen her. She has no doorway, the woman said. Because you never closed the one she left from. What are you talking about? Okeke demanded. The well. They all turned. What about the well? Adaobi asked. The woman looked at her with those storm-colored eyes. That was where her feet were last seen. That is where her echo lingers strongest. But no one sealed it. No rites. No closing. It's just a well, Nena said. It's never just anything, the woman whispered. Where something ends or begins is sacred. If left open, it becomes a wound. They all stared at her. Then Obina stood. I'll go. He grabbed his shoes. No, the woman said. Not you. Why not? She won't listen to you. She never did. She turned to Nena. But she listened to you. Nena swallowed. She hated me the last week. I was harsh. I told her to stop being childish. She didn't hate you, the woman said softly. She hurt. And hurting people push. Adaobi touched her daughter's hand. Do you want me to go with you? No, the woman said again. She must go alone. And take something that belonged to Amara. Something she loved. Nena hesitated. Then rose. She went to the small chest at the foot of her bed and pulled out the old scarf Amara used to wear, the sky blue one with the tiny embroidered sun. It still smelled faintly of the oil she used in her hair. When she stepped outside, the wind began to stir. The woman followed her only to the edge of the compound. Do not speak until she does. And when she does, do not turn. Nena nodded, heart pounding. She walked to the well. The rope was still tied neatly, the bucket resting beside the stone rim. Her hands trembled as she tied the scarf around the handle and lowered it down. Then she waited. The air felt denser here. The shadows longer. The scarf vanished into darkness. Nothing. Then a tug. She pulled it up, slowly, and found the scarf damp. And something clinging to it. A small clay bead. One of the ones Amara had worn on her ankle bracelet. Nena dropped to her knees. Amara, she whispered, breaking the rule. Silence. Then behind her, a giggle. She turned instinctively. And saw nothing. But the wind picked up, carrying with it a scent she hadn't smelled in weeks. Hibiscus and river water. She stood and walked home, bead in hand. The woman was gone. No one had seen her leave. That night the voice didn't cry. It sang. Softly. Just once. And then the mirror cleared, completely. As if a part of the house had exhaled at last. But the next morning something stranger happened. In the center of the main room they found muddy footprints. Small ones. Leading from the door to the mirror. And the scarf, dry now, lay folded neatly beside it. They had tried every kind of lock. Wooden bars, rusted bolts, even an iron latch borrowed from the church storeroom, blessed and dipped in holy water before it was nailed to the door. Still, every dusk, the door to Amara's room eased open with the same soft creak it always made. As if no metal in the world could hold back what lingered behind it. At first they thought it was faulty hinges. Okeke took them off, scrubbed the rust, replaced the nails. The door held. Until the wind changed and dusk arrived again. Then it opened. Always slowly, never slamming, never forceful. A quiet, persistent swing, the kind a living hand might make if it didn't want to disturb. After a week, Adeobi began dragging a stool in front of it, wedging it between the door and the opposite wall. The next morning they found the stool in the hallway and the door wide open, curtain shifting gently in windless air. Maybe we're the ones doing it, Nena whispered one night. In our sleep. Out of habit. No one sleepwalks that quietly, Adeobi answered. And none of us sleep with mud on our feet. The next evening they smeared ash along the floor, right under the threshold. Come morning, 5 sets of footprints were there. And a 6th. Smaller. Bare. Just outside the door. That was when they began sleeping in the same room, all 4 of them packed close, lights kept on until the oil ran out. Even Obinna, who never cried in front of anyone, curled up beside his mother and clung to her wrist like a lifeline. But even in that shared safety the house would not let them forget. It started with the whispers, Amara's name said faintly from corners where no one stood. Then the scent of hibiscus oil, the kind she'd worn in her braids, lingering strongest around dusk. And then one morning, they woke to find something on the pillow between Nena and her mother. A braid. Neatly coiled. Tied at the end with the faded ribbon Amara had begged their mother for on her 15th birthday. The same ribbon they had buried, in the small bundle of cloth the priest blessed when they had no body to give the ground. Adeobi didn't scream. She just backed away slowly, pulling her children with her. Nena stared at the braid, mouth dry. Her fingers itched to touch it, but her body refused to move. It's hers, she finally said. It's really hers. We buried that, her mother whispered. But what if we weren't supposed to? They burned the braid that night in the backyard fire pit. But the next morning another one lay on the windowsill. Damp. Still dripping. It hadn't rained. The family stopped locking the door after that. Not out of surrender but out of something else, something close to respect. Or fear. Or both. They started treating the room like a shrine. The bed was remade daily. Flowers were left in the corner. No one entered without knocking first. It didn't help. The door still swung open at dusk. One night Obinna, restless, tired of silence, crept toward it. He stood in the doorway, staring at the empty bed, the soft shape of the blanket as if someone had just risen from it. Then he whispered, "Are you there?" Nothing. But when he turned to leave, he heard a rustle behind him. He looked back. The bed was smooth now. Perfectly smooth. Like no one had ever touched it. He never spoke of that night. But after that, he began leaving drawings by the door, stick figures of a girl with braids and a well beside her. The family grew quiet. Not from lack of grief, but from its fullness. There was nothing more to say. Amara hadn't come home. But she hadn't left either. She walked the hallways between dusk and dream, not angry, not mournful, just present. Like a question still waiting to be asked. And every night, as the sun dipped behind the hills and the room dimmed to gold, the door creaked open on its own. Soft, steady, certain. A reminder that not all doors are meant to be locked. And not every goodbye stays said. For 3 nights, Amara's father woke drenched in sweat, the taste of earth thick on his tongue. Each dream came the same way, a silent image, no sound, no breeze, just the old root cellar behind their house. And Amara, standing barefoot before it, head tilted slightly, arm raised, finger pointing to the ground. Always the same gesture. Not beckoning. Not waving. Just pointing, still as a statue, her eyes wide and unreadable. He hadn't stepped near that cellar in months. It had long ago been sealed, the door warped from age, the lock rusted shut. They stored nothing there anymore. The smell of damp wood and mold had kept even the curious children away. But now the image tugged at his thoughts like a rope around the ribs. Something in the dream wasn't letting go. By the fourth night he stopped resisting. At dawn, he rose without telling anyone and walked barefoot through the dew-drenched grass. The cellar crouched behind the house like a forgotten mouth. The air grew colder the closer he got. Chickens, normally scattered about the backyard, kept their distance. He tried the lock first. It snapped easily as though it had been waiting to fall apart. The wooden doors groaned as he pulled them open. A breath of stale earth rose from below, thick with something he couldn't name. He stepped inside. The stairs creaked beneath his weight. Cobwebs clung to his arms. Dust danced in slants of morning light. It was just as he remembered, shelves of long-rotted jars, the faint scent of onions, the quiet weight of stone around him. But she wasn't there. Not Amara. Not her voice. Not even her shadow. Still, something itched beneath his skin, a sense that what he was looking for lay lower, deeper. Not here in the place everyone had forgotten. But under it. He dropped to his knees and began to sweep his hands along the packed earth floor. Dust rose. Dirt clung to his fingers. For a long time nothing. Then a soft hollow thud. His hands stilled. He pressed down. The sound came again, not solid, not stone. Something beneath the floor gave slightly, like a pocket of air or a loose panel. His heart stumbled. He dug faster, fingertips splitting against tiny rocks, nails scraping soil. After minutes that stretched like rope, his fingers found something strange. A plank. Old wood. Hidden beneath the packed dirt. He scraped until the shape of it revealed itself. A crude trapdoor, no hinges, just laid into a carved space. He pried his fingers under the edge and lifted. The smell hit him first. Sweet and sharp. Like old blood. Below, a narrow cavity had been carved into the earth, deeper than the cellar, barely wide enough for a child to lie in. It wasn't a grave. It wasn't finished enough to be one. It was a hiding place. A hurried one. Inside, tangled in the soil, he found the hem of a dress, familiar, faded blue with tiny red flowers. Amara's. The one she wore the day she vanished. The sleeve torn. Dirt caked and stiff. And beside it, a lock of hair, curled tightly, ribboned in a strip of fabric that looked like it had been ripped from a sleeve. No body. No bones. Just these pieces. Left like offerings. Or warnings. He didn't scream. He didn't move for a long time. Just knelt beside the hollow space and stared into the earth that had almost kept her story sealed forever. He didn't know whether to cry or to dig further. Behind him, the cellar remained silent. He took the dress and the lock of hair in trembling hands and climbed out into the morning. The sun had risen higher now, but it didn't warm him. Not as he walked into the kitchen, where his wife and children sat frozen at the sight of him, covered in dust, hands trembling, fabric dangling from his fists. He said only, "She showed me." That night he dreamed again. The cellar. The pointing. But this time Amara smiled, just faintly. Her eyes were still wide. Still watching. But she didn't point. She only stood there. Like a door had been opened. And something still waited on the other side. The house was quieter than usual that night. The kind of quiet that comes not from rest, but from fear held in too long. Silence stretched so tight it begins to hum. The family sat close together in Amara's old room, each holding on to something. A photo, a braid, a word left unsaid. The air was thick with smoke from the lantern and heavier still with grief that refused to age. No one had entered this room willingly in weeks. Since the braid returned, since the scratching in the attic, since Obina disappeared, they had all avoided it. But tonight felt different. Her mother had insisted. "She's still here," she'd said softly, almost tenderly. "We've been ignoring her. Pretending. But she hasn't left. Not really." The others didn't argue. What argument could they make against the dream her father had, of Amara pointing to the earth, or the little brother's murmured songs in his sleep? Ones Amara used to hum. What could they say to the muddy prints, the cracked mirror, the way her name had shown up etched into the bedroom window the morning after the mystic left? So they came. One by one, solemn as mourners and alert as sentries. The mother lit a candle and placed it at the center of the room, atop Amara's small wooden desk. Her father sat near the bed. Ghanian took her place on the floor, back against the wall, cradling the doll they'd found in the attic, the one with damp hair. The boy sat closest to the door, knees hugged to his chest, eyes darting at every sound. They waited. The candle flickered, though no wind came. A faint scent lingered in the room, rainwater, river mud, and hibiscus, the way Amara had always smelled after washing her hair. Her presence was not a scream in the dark or a clatter in the attic. It was breath. a weight in the corners of the room. A gaze you couldn't quite meet. Her mother knelt beside the candle. "Amara," she whispered, and her voice broke like old glass. "I don't know where you are or what you've become, but you're still ours. My child. My first breath after pain. If you can hear me, say something." The candle sputtered once. Then again. The shadows shifted slightly on the wall, stretching upward. "Please," her mother said. "You didn't get to say goodbye. I didn't get to hold you." The flame steadied. Then something impossible happened. The shadow on the far wall moved. It stretched longer than the candle should have allowed. It shimmered, flickered, and then broke into two pieces, two shadows standing side by side. One tall like a young girl. The other smaller, curling toward the first as if leaning in. The temperature dropped. A thin, dry whisper came, not from the shadow, not from the candle, but from beneath the floorboards. A whisper like dry leaves blown across a grave. "I never got to say goodbye." Her mother gasped. Her hand flew to her chest. The whisper returned, louder, clearer. "You didn't look back. You didn't call my name." "I did," the mother choked. "I never stopped saying it. Amara, Amara, Amara." The candle flame leaned hard to the left. The air turned thick the way it does before a storm. The little brother clung to his father. The shadows on the wall seemed to move in silence, like they were pacing behind the candlelight. One of them flicked suddenly, the way a figure turns when it hears a name. Ghanian stared at the mirror beside the closet. "Look," she said quietly. They all turned. At first it was just a reflection. A family huddled in grief. A single candlelight. But then, slowly the glass began to fog, though the room was dry. The center of the mirror clouded, and then cleared just enough to reveal something behind their reflection. A face. Not the clear face of a ghost or a memory, but the faint outline of Amara, eyes closed as if she were just sleeping behind the glass. Her skin was pale, her braid draped over her shoulder, her lips pressed together like she was holding something inside. Her name appeared next. Etched into the lower right corner of the glass, not scratched by hand but forming as they watched, letter by letter. Amara. The letters gleamed as if made of ice. The whisper came again. "He waited until I turned away. Then he followed." Her father closed his eyes. "Obina," he said under his breath. "I ran," the voice said. "I ran fast. But the earth caught me." The shadows opened. The mirror clouded again, then cleared. This time her reflection stood with eyes open, watching them. A tear ran down her cheek. "I don't know how to leave," she said. Her voice came not from the mirror but from the floorboards again, from the corners, the ceiling, everywhere and nowhere. "He held me here. Something old. Something I never saw. But it wears his name. I tried to come home." Ghanian was crying now, tears dripping silently into her lap. The doll she held had grown cold in her hands. Its damp hair clung to her fingers. "You are home," her mother whispered. "You are always home." The candle flickered so violently it nearly went out. But the shadow didn't disappear. It swelled, spreading across the room like spilled ink. The edges of the walls seemed to blur. The bed creaked as if someone had just sat on it. The little brother stared at the ceiling, mouth slightly open. "She's here," he said. "She's right there." The mother reached toward the mirror. Her fingers hovered just above the glass. The warmth radiating from it pulsed like a slow heartbeat. "If we bring your body back," she whispered, "can you leave this place?" No answer. "I will go," the father said. "I'll dig. I'll call her name until the ground breaks open." "Let me rest," the whisper said. And then came something none of them expected. Laughter. Not cruel or mocking. Not mad. Just a small, breathy sound, like the giggle of a child remembering something sweet. "I saw the stars," the voice said. "I floated. It was quiet. But the name brought me back. The name and the braid and the blood. I'm not meant to stay. I'm not meant to rot." Then silence. Not the tense silence from before. A softer one. As though something had finally been exhaled. The shadows returned to normal. The mirror cooled. The name remained etched in the corner. The candle went out. The family sat there in the dark, no longer afraid. They knew the shape of her now. Not a ghost. Not a monster. Just a girl who hadn't gotten to say goodbye. They left her door open that night. And in the morning on the desk, lay a folded slip of paper. Yellowed, old, the ink almost faded. It read, "You said my name. I heard it. Thank you. After that, the weeping stopped. The attic quieted. The braid, the doll, the shadows, all stilled. But the name never faded from the mirror. And once a year, when the light bends just right through the window, you can still see her, Amara, watching gently from the glass, her face no longer full of sorrow but of something close to peace. Time moves differently inside a house that waits. The seasons pass, rain pelts the roof in waves, dust gathers thick on old window panes, and ivy curls greedily up the sides. But the walls do not sag. The locks never rust. The house holds itself together as if by will alone, as if crumbling would be too much like letting go. People in the village whisper about the house at the edge of the hill, the one with the pale blue shutters and the crooked path leading to a porch no one sweeps. Some say it's cursed. Others say it's blessed. But everyone agrees on one thing, that it is not empty. The family still lives there. They rise each morning. They cook. They sweep. They pray. They laugh sometimes. But when the light begins to thin and shadows stretch long over the doorway, something shifts in them. They move more quietly. They glance more often toward the stairs. They close only 9 plates around the table instead of 10. No one speaks of the 10th. Visitors, when they come, are welcomed kindly. Offered yam and stew, sweetened tea, a warm bench to rest their backs. But they rarely stay past dusk. Because always, just as the light begins to dim, someone sees her. A flicker at the corner of their eye. A shadow moving past a window when all the doors are closed. A slim figure on the landing just beside the stairwell, hands gently resting on the rail. Some say she sits by the window with her head tilted, as if listening for a name. Some say she paces the hallway upstairs, a soft echo of footsteps where none should be. The family never acknowledges it. They never say her name aloud anymore. Not because they've forgotten but because the house remembers for them. Every birthday a plate is placed for her. No food, no drink, only a folded cloth napkin and a single hibiscus bloom. On the anniversary of her disappearance, her little brother, now grown, lights a candle and leaves it by the window where her shadow is most often seen. It burns until morning, untouched. One year, a traveler from a distant town stayed in the village. He was a skeptic, a man of books and science. He scoffed at the stories. Shadows don't haunt houses, he said. Only memories do. That night, he insisted on staying past dark, sitting in the parlor with the family. He didn't scoff when the hallway grew cold without breeze. He didn't laugh when the candle near the mirror flickered and curved, as if blown from within the glass. And when he saw the slim shadow pause at the foot of the stairs, standing utterly still as if deciding whether to ascend or speak, he rose silently, bowed his head, and left without a word. He did not return. No one else ever tries to spend the night. The mother has aged softly. Her hair has silvered, and her spine bends more than before. But every evening she hums the same lullaby as she sweeps the front step, the one she used to sing when brushing Amara's hair. Sometimes she pauses in the middle as if listening for another voice to join hers. Her father tends the garden. His knees ache and his hands are stiff. But he still plants hibiscus in rows, red ones like the flower she always tucked behind her ear. When a flower blooms near the edge of the garden fence where he didn't plant any, he doesn't question it. He waters it gently. Her siblings live their lives but none of them move far. They visit often. They bring their children who run through the house until dusk, until one of them suddenly stops, eyes wide, saying they saw someone sitting on the stairs. She was smiling, one of them says. She looked like me. The parents only nod. In the attic, her things remain untouched. Her doll, her books, her favorite scarf, all neatly arranged. The braid, once found on the pillow, is kept in a wooden box by the window. Every year, someone polishes the mirror in the hall. No one asks why. Sometimes the family wonders, if her body had been found, would the shadow have stayed? If they had buried her, would her spirit have moved on? But they don't speak these questions aloud. They've learned that not all things need answers. They've learned that not all things need to be buried to be honored. And so the house waits. It doesn't mourn. It doesn't creak in despair. It simply holds space, a place between presence and absence. A home for a shadow that still returns, not to haunt, but to remember. Because sometimes, when love is deep enough, the ones who leave find a way back, even if it's only in a glimmer at the top of the stairs or the echo of laughter that no one can place. And in that house, when dusk settles in and the candles are lit, there will always be a 10th place waiting. Because Amara's shadow always comes home.